Chapter 1: Finding my voice. Perhaps it was better just as it was. There was never any need for things to change. Sometimes, dreams are better left as dreams, unfulfilled. Sometimes, ignorance truly is bliss. In that youthful season, all I did was put up a brave front, knowing neither how to pause nor how to turn back. Beginnings and endings always came with solitude. Had they not found me, my heart might have shattered into fragments long ago, scattered into the sky. My world kept spinning without my knowledge or consent. A story that had once closed its curtains became an eternal fiction. If we had a chance to do it all over again, would it have been a slightly better story? My name is Luna. This is my story. I was born in a small, rural town on the outskirts. Some might call it a place filled with old-world charm. Others would say it's a town that refuses to change. To me, it was suffocating. In a world crafted by someone else, there was no place for me. All I had left was my voice. Since the age of 9, I had been auditioning as a vocalist, pouring my heart into every performance. But every time, the only thing that arrived in my mailbox was yet another rejection letter. I started to believe that this world had no allies for someone like me. That is, until I met them. Alex. He was an outsider, someone who always stood apart. Dressed in all black every single day, he looked like a shadow that had come to life. I had never spoken to him. Not once. Most of the time, he was loud and obnoxious. But on certain days, when irritation etched itself across his face, it was impossible to ignore him. One day, my friend said she'd been invited to a party at his place. I didn't have a particularly good impression of him. The rumors I'd heard were far from good. Then she asked me to go with her. I wanted to say no. The invitation wasn't even from him. Why would I want to go? But she wouldn't take no for an answer. I watched the troubled expression on her face, and my resolve began to waver. A part of me felt uneasy about letting her go to his party alone. So, reluctantly, I agreed. The moment I did, her face lit up with joy. She hurried back to her seat, and I felt a twinge of regret. At the same time, a small part of me was oddly excited. This would be my first ever party. I lied to my parents. I told them I was going to hang out at another friend's house, a friend they'd approve of. By the time we arrived at Alex's house, the party was already in full swing. The place was packed with people I didn't recognize. My friend and I exchanged uncertain glances. We didn't belong there. That's when Alex noticed us. He came running over, a grin already plastered on his face. "Thanks for coming," he said to my friend. She started to introduce me, but he cut her off with a smile. "Hey! We already know each other. She's in my class. You guys have fun at the party." With that, he flashed us another grin and dashed back to his group of friends. It was the first time I had ever spoken to him. Well, not exactly. It wasn't much of a conversation, more like him talking at me. But somehow, he didn't give off a bad vibe. Chapter 2: The Barn Shed Surprises. Strangers spoke to us. In this small, quiet countryside town, it surprised me how many people I still didn't know. I hated talking to people. It always felt like their thoughts and mine were worlds apart, as if no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't understand each other. But sometimes, a small voice whispered in my mind, what if there are people out there who think the same way I do? What if I just haven't met them yet? The noise outside suddenly grew louder, shattering my train of thought. Through the window, I caught sight of strangers heading toward the garage. My friend and I exchanged a glance. Without a word, we decided to follow. The closer we got, the more we could hear a booming sound coming from inside. Curiosity pulled us forward. We stepped through the open doorway. Alex was playing an instrument. I assumed it was a guitar. Behind him, a drum set loomed like a quiet shadow. I'd heard he had an older brother, someone who had long since moved away. Those instruments had belonged to him, back when he was in a band. Influenced by his brother, Alex had picked up the guitar. It was just a rumor. But now, seeing him up close, watching his fingers glide over the strings, I felt a spark. Something like the flicker of a crush. Another boy approached him, Rain, Alex's best friend. Rain was in my class too. We'd never spoken, not even once. He picked up another guitar, one just like Alex's, and began to play. I didn't know what they were about to start, but an uneasy excitement stirred in my chest. In an instant, the sound thickened. It became heavier, as though the air itself was vibrating with their music. At the time, I didn't know the difference between a guitar and a bass guitar. To me, they looked the same. Later, I would learn that Alex was playing the guitar, while Rain's instrument was the bass. But in that moment, none of that mattered. They were playing songs requested by their friends. And they looked different, not like the boys I usually saw in the classroom. A little more grown up, perhaps. A little more alive. They seemed so happy, so natural, as they played. Watching them, I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. The music I loved so much was right there, unfolding in front of me. A flustered boy hurried over to another. I couldn't catch most of what he said, but one word stood out: drums. Reluctantly, he made his way to the drum set and sat down. Alex began to play a song that was popular at the time. Rain joined in, his bass locking perfectly with the rhythm. The boy on the drums hesitated, but soon, his hands found their rhythm too. And suddenly, the sounds from the three of them merged into one. It was the first time I had ever seen live music performed. They probably weren't very good. Not by any real standard. But to me, in that moment, they shone like heroes. Everyone around us was swept up in the energy. Laughing. Cheering. Perhaps embarrassed by the attention, Rain kept fiddling with his nose, a nervous habit of his. As they played, I overheard someone mention my name. They were talking about the vocalist auditions I had gone to. In a small town like this, rumors spread quickly. After all, I was probably the only one around here bold enough to audition as a vocalist. The boy talking about me walked over to Alex. They glanced in my direction. Their voices were low, unreadable. Then Alex turned to Rain and said something I couldn't hear. Rain nodded. He began setting up a microphone. Alex came to me. He mentioned the name of a hit song. Do you know it? It was a song I had once performed at an audition. At first, I didn't understand why he would ask me that. But when I said, yes, I know that song, he grabbed my hand. Without a word, he led me to the microphone stand. The drummer tapped out the count. 1, 2, 3, 4. The song began. For a moment, memories of that audition day flooded my mind: the nervous excitement, the bittersweet sting of the rejection letter, the tears I shed afterward. But as the music surrounded me, something shifted. This time, it felt different. This time, I wasn't alone. Chapter 3: Breaking Through the Walls. Without fully understanding what was happening, I surrendered myself to the moment. And then, I began to sing. As my voice broke through the air, Alex and Rain turned to each other. Their faces mirrored the same look: astonishment, disbelief. For a moment, I thought I might have imagined it. But then, the band's sound surged forward, growing louder, like a wave threatening to crash over me. I refused to be swept away. Instead, I raised my voice higher, pouring everything I had into it. When I came to my senses, the crowd in front of me was screaming. Wild. Uncontrollable. A feeling I had never known before gripped me tightly. It was as if the rejection letters etched into my memory were burning away, their ashes drifting into nothingness. When our performance ended, people flooded toward me, their words tumbling over each other. Your singing was incredible. My heart pounded fiercely. Its rhythm was so loud, so fast, that I felt like the whole world could hear it. When I turned around, Alex and Rain were shaking hands. Alex walked over to me, a wide smile spreading across his face. It's settled, then, he said, his voice brimming with certainty. You know what this means, don't you? Still caught in the whirlwind of excitement, I couldn't even remember how I got home that night. By Monday, the events in Alex's garage had already become common knowledge. When I arrived at school, strangers approached me one after another. I didn't know how to react. Standing there, confused, overwhelmed, I felt embarrassed. And yet, I also felt a joy unlike anything I'd ever known. For the first time, it felt like my singing had truly been recognized. After a chaotic morning of relentless attention, lunchtime came and went. Just as I was catching my breath, Alex and Rain appeared, heading straight for me. Alex didn't hesitate. Are you free this Saturday? If you don't mind, I'd like you to come to my garage again. For a split second, I thought he might be asking me out on a date. But then, I remembered, these were two boys. And the location was a garage. Realization hit quickly. This wasn't anything romantic. As I hesitated, Alex smiled. If you don't feel like it, that's totally fine. But you like singing, right? In the garage, you can really let loose. Before I even realized it, the words slipped out, okay. What time should I come? It felt almost as though someone else had spoken for me. Alex's face lit up with innocent delight. How about 2 in the afternoon? I'm looking forward to it. He and Rain walked off together, leaving me standing there. Moments later, my friend rushed over. What happened? Did they do anything mean to you? Her voice was tinged with concern. When I told her I'd be going back to the garage, her eyes widened in alarm. Do you want me to come with you? She asked it again and again, her worry palpable. I reassured her with a smile. It's fine. I can go alone. Still uneasy, she said, if anything happens, call me right away. That evening, I couldn't shake the conversation from my mind. For some reason, I found myself wondering whether I should wear that rock-style t-shirt I usually avoided. Even after I got home, I couldn't calm my restless heart. The songs Alex and Rain had played kept echoing in my mind. I started listening to those songs. And before long, I was singing along. In my imagination, I was back in that garage, performing. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up, playing the songs over and over again. By dawn, I had made up my mind. I would wear that rock-style t-shirt. The one I had always avoided, thinking it was too provocative for this quiet town. As I held it in my hands, a wild thought crossed my mind. Maybe, just maybe, I could become a hero like them. My heart raced with excitement. In the end, I didn't drift off to sleep until the early hours of the morning. Chapter 4: Finding Myself. I ended up sleeping in until almost noon. Making sure my parents wouldn't notice the rock-style t-shirt I was wearing, I slipped out of the house as quietly as I could. From inside, the sound of our dog barking trailed behind me. I didn't stop. Quickening my pace, I headed straight for Alex's house. As I approached the garage, the sound of a guitar reached my ears. They were already playing. The moment Alex spotted my t-shirt, his face lit up. Wow, that's awesome, he exclaimed. I'm so glad you're getting into this. His grin was so genuine, it made my cheeks burn with embarrassment. Why did I ever think this was a good idea? Regret hit me like a wave. But before I could turn away, Rain spoke softly. That's the real you. something inside me cracked open. It wasn't something I fully understood at the time, but it left me shaken. The drummer, a boy I hadn't spoken to yet, walked over. "I'm Constantine. Nice to meet you." His voice was steady, his nod friendly. Alex jumped in, practically buzzing with energy. He's a year older than us, but he's been playing drums since he was a kid. And he's insanely good. That's why we decided to make him the leader of our band. Leader of the band? I still didn't fully grasp what was happening. Before I could process it, Alex turned back to me and grinned. "Let's start with that song from last time. Your voice was seriously incredible." Suddenly, Constantine clacked his drumsticks together in a quick count-off, and the music began before I could even reply. The joy of singing. In that moment, as I sang, there was nothing else. No doubts. No fears. For a fleeting second, I could almost hear the cheers from that night all over again. The song ended in what felt like an instant. Before I knew it, the words spilled from my mouth. "I know the other songs you guys played at the party, too." It was as if someone else had spoken for me. Alex and Rain exchanged a high five, grinning like they'd been waiting for this moment. "I knew you'd say that," Alex said. Rain called out the name of the next song. Before I had a chance to hesitate, Constantine's count-off began again. "This is so fun." The thought flashed through my mind, bright and unmistakable. For the first time, I felt like I'd found a place where I belonged. We kept playing, completely absorbed, until the sky turned dark. That night, I couldn't shake the excitement coursing through me. The music, the energy, the connection, it was still buzzing in my veins. There's a unique groove to live music. No sound coming from a smartphone could ever replicate it. For the first time, I understood why people are drawn to live performances. No two are ever the same. Even if musicians try their best to play the same way, it's almost impossible for four people to perform a song exactly the same way twice. And now, I finally understood the magic of being in a real band. Together with them. I never imagined this would happen. Me, a part of their band. But I was so happy. For the first time, I felt like I'd found allies. People who believed in me. People who told me it was okay to sing. Maybe, it was the first time someone had ever told me that it was okay to just be myself. Chapter 5, the first show. We had just begun working on our first original song. When I listened to the music Alex had composed, it was as if the melodies carried their own energy, melancholic yet passionate, like a flame burst into life before my eyes. "Why don't you try writing the lyrics?" Alex's suggestion took me completely off guard. Write lyrics? Me? The idea had never even crossed my mind. But something about the way the music resonated with me made it impossible to say no. I let my emotions guide me, scribbling down the words that seemed to form naturally in my mind. When I showed them to the band, their reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "This is amazing," Rain said. Even Constantine nodded in approval, his usual stoicism replaced by something close to admiration. Their encouragement gave me confidence. My energy began to pour into the song, merging with the life Alex had breathed into it. It was still raw, still a fledgling piece of music. But in the back of my mind, a thought took root. Maybe, if this song reached enough ears, if it was praised by enough people, it could grow into something immense, something with a life of its own. I kept writing. The band kept playing. Before long, classmates who listened to our music started saying things like, "Your song really gave me strength." Those words, directed at me, were a first. Perhaps that was the first time I ever felt like I had made a difference in someone's life. For someone like me, who knew so little about the world, it was a small but deeply meaningful moment of pride. By the time we had a few original songs under our belt, Alex made another of his signature sudden announcements. "We'll perform a concert next month. What should we do about our outfits?" As always, he didn't bother asking us beforehand. And yet, if it weren't for someone like Alex, I wonder what I'd even be doing right now. Our first concert was at a small venue in the neighboring town. The audience? Mostly the same friends who'd crammed into Alex's garage that day. They were loud and rowdy, their energy infectious. If a stranger had wandered in, they'd never have guessed it was our debut. The place felt alive, buzzing with excitement. And then there was Alex. Just moments before we started, he'd been downing a beer. His antics on stage? Pure chaos. No other word fit. It was simply crazy. After that, those same friends showed up at every single concert. Their wild enthusiasm began to draw in others, strangers who couldn't help but get swept up in the energy. Before we knew it, our audience was growing. Friends and strangers alike, all drawn together by the music. One day, the manager of the small venue where we always played approached us. "There's a slightly bigger outdoor festival happening this summer," he said. "If you'd like to perform, I can ask the organizer for you." What do you think? The festival. It was held every year in a town farther away from ours. Plenty of professional bands played there, but there was a time slot reserved for promising amateur acts. For us, at that stage in our journey, it felt like an impossible dream. Yes! Alex didn't even hesitate. "We'd love to play. Please, ask the organizer for us." As always, he made the decision without consulting us. But this time, none of us objected. Not even me. I didn't believe we'd actually get to perform. Maybe Rain and Constantine felt the same way. Maybe they thought the idea was too far-fetched. But when the venue manager said, "I'll let you know once I hear back," a spark of hope flickered in my chest. That night, after I got home, I decided to look up the festival on YouTube. What I saw stunned me. A massive stage. A sea of people. If I had known beforehand how big this festival really was, I might have opposed Alex's decision. But somehow, my excitement outweighed my fear just a little. Chapter 6: Transformation. One day at school, Alex and Rain approached me with radiant smiles. "Hey, guess what?" The other day, the venue manager told us. Alex paused for dramatic effect, grinning from ear to ear. "We're officially in for the outdoor festival." For a moment, I couldn't process what he was saying. An outdoor festival? Us? I stood there in stunned silence as a wave of chatter broke out nearby. Students who had overheard started gathering around. Alex turned to them, his voice brimming with excitement. "We're performing at the outdoor festival. You guys better come, just like you always do for our shows." The crowd buzzed with energy, their voices growing louder as the news spread like wildfire. Before we knew it, our small, quiet town was alive with the chatter. It was the kind of place where even the smallest event felt monumental. But this was something entirely different. Our town, far removed from the glamour of television and the endless stream of the internet, was suddenly awake. From this secluded corner of the world, a tiny spark had ignited. And it was pulling everyone into its glow. That afternoon, our music teacher approached us, smiling warmly. "You'll need an adult chaperone to perform at that festival, right?" She glanced at us, her eyes twinkling. "Plus, the venue is pretty far away. I'll take you there in my car." Apparently, she'd been inspired by School of Rock. She even admitted, "I've always wanted to do something like that." Her usual serious demeanor softened as she revealed her secret love for rock music. And she wasn't the only one. Other teachers came forward too, offering their support. "We should arrange a school bus," one suggested. "That way, the whole student body can come cheer you on." Unbeknownst to us, word about our performance was spreading far beyond the school. I didn't fully understand what was happening, but I didn't mind it either. It felt kind of nice. At night, I found myself watching videos of past performances from that festival on YouTube. There was one female singer whose outfit caught my eye. It was bold, beautiful. Maybe I could try wearing something similar. Then, a memory surfaced in my mind. Hair holds memories. They say girls cut their hair after heartbreaks, to sever the painful memories, to move forward into a new chapter. The me who couldn't share my true feelings with anyone. The me who was never given a chance to sing. The me who cried alone over rejection letters. That version of myself belonged to the past. Maybe I could cut her away. Be reborn as someone new. Before I knew it, I was standing at the sink, scissors in hand. Snip. 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 Locks of hair fell into the sink. The reflection in the mirror stared back at me. It was unfamiliar. Yet strangely captivating. Hello, Luna. Welcome to my world. The next morning, when I arrived at school, my friends immediately gathered around me. Their eyes fixed on my short hair. For us girls, hair is something precious. Seeing mine transformed overnight, they couldn't help but worry. As I walked into the classroom, Alex and Rain approached me. Rain was the first to speak. That hairstyle suits you better, he said, his voice calm, his smile warm. You're beautiful. I never expected to hear something like that. Not from him. Unsure how to respond, I managed a simple, thank you. Then I quickly walked away. It was the first time anyone had ever called me beautiful. A strange doubt crept into my mind. Am I really Luna? Or was the old me never Luna to begin with? Looking back now, those thoughts seem so trivial. Almost silly. But at that moment, I couldn't stop myself from taking them seriously. Chapter 7 Beautiful Minorities. Our band name, Outcast Minorities, was something Alex and Rain had come up with. One day, during a rehearsal in the garage, Rain spoke up. Hey, since we're playing at the festival, how about we change the band name? Alex thought for a moment, then turned to him. What kind of name do you have in mind? Rain grinned, his eyes lighting up. Luna doesn't really give off an outcast vibe. How about Beautiful Minorities? Alex lit up like a firework. That's awesome. Let's go with that. What do you think, Constantine? Constantine, our quiet and steady leader, shrugged casually. If you guys are into it, I'm cool with it. Finally, Rain turned to me. What about you, Luna? What do you think? Caught off guard, I stammered, huh? Oh, I'm fine with whatever. In truth, I was just overwhelmingly embarrassed. I mean, beautiful minorities? By this point, our town's excitement about the outdoor festival had reached fever pitch. For such a small, sleepy place, it felt like the biggest event in years. Our names and stories were popping up in local newspapers. Even news segments ran features about us. When we visited the shopping mall in the neighboring town, strangers started approaching us. They were people who had seen us play at small venues, now brimming with excitement. I'm coming to the festival, one of them said. You guys were amazing at that show last month. Hearing this, Alex was absolutely thrilled. He might have already started believing we were celebrities. We began visiting the mall almost daily. At first, I felt a little overwhelmed, but slowly, bit by bit, I started enjoying the attention. Girls I didn't even know would come up to me, handing me cute stuffed animals. One of those stuffed animals still sits on my desk to this day. Somewhere along the way, I realized something important. There were people who found strength in listening to our songs. People who connected with us, even if we didn't know their names. And with that, I finally discovered the meaning behind my singing. Before I knew it, I was singing everywhere. All the time. One day, my friend pulled me aside. You've been shining so brightly lately, she said softly. But it feels like you're drifting somewhere far away. Somewhere I can't follow. Please, don't forget about me. Her words hit me hard. I looked her in the eye and said, if you hadn't invited me to Alex's party that day, I wouldn't be who I am now. You're the one who gave me this chance. I could never forget you. Tears streamed down her face as she threw her arms around me. In that moment, I made a promise to myself, no matter what path I chose, I would never hurt someone to move forward. I would never betray or abandon anyone. That was the vow I made that day. As the day of the outdoor festival drew closer, Alex began to show signs of nervousness. For someone who was always so overconfident, so quick to put up a tough front, it was the first time he'd ever revealed such a vulnerable side to us. Seeing him like that, it gave me a strange sense of relief. Proof that he was human. Just like me. Meanwhile, Rain and Constantine were spending more and more time rehearsing together. "We're the foundation of the band's sound," Constantine would declare, his voice filled with determination. They trained with the focus of professional athletes. We were becoming a unified force, all chasing the same goal, to deliver something unforgettable. It was a sound that only the four of us could create. Something uniquely ours. For me, this was my first experience being in a band. I had nothing to compare it to. But even so, I couldn't help feeling that these three were the best there could ever be. Chapter 8: Hope and Sunshine. One day during rehearsal, we were taking a break when Constantine brought up the question, "What should we wear for our stage outfits at the festival?" "Black, obviously." Alex chimed in immediately. "A rock band's gotta have black stage outfits, it's tradition." Rain smirked, leaning back in his chair. "But Luna looked great in that t-shirt she wore at our first rehearsal, didn't she?" Alex jumped on board right away. "Yeah, totally. That shirt was seriously cool." I froze, unsure of what to say. I couldn't bring myself to tell them I'd already bought my stage outfit online. A piece that resembled what a famous singer had worn at the very same festival years ago. For a moment, I felt a little lonely, like I wasn't truly a part of their vision. But then I thought, no. I need to find my own identity. Not just mimic someone else. With a smile, I nodded and said, "All right, I'll go with that." It was the early morning of the outdoor festival. The hour before sunrise. In the end, I had been too excited to sleep at all. When I walked into the living room, I found my parents already there. My mother hugged me tightly. "Did you sleep at all last night? We're coming to your concert today, you know. Just enjoy it with all your heart." In that moment, I regretted all the times I'd been rebellious toward them. Deep down, they had always been rooting for me. In our small, rural town, most people shy away from doing anything out of the ordinary. My parents were no exception, serious, reserved, and cautious. But they had never once objected to me joining the band. Maybe that was the greatest kindness they could show me in their own way. I thanked them sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, and then stepped out of the house. The sky was still dark when our teacher's car pulled up in front of my house. She had even made sandwiches for us to eat for breakfast. Alex, unusually subdued, quietly said, "Thank you so much." With a laugh, she replied, "That's the first time I've ever heard you say thank you." Her tone softened. "You know, you're our hope. I was born in this town, but most of my friends have left for the city. If things keep going like this, there might come a time when no one is left here." She paused, glancing at us in the rearview mirror. "People here can't stop that from happening, and that helplessness makes them feel negative. You've felt it too, haven't you? But then, out of nowhere, energetic kids like you appeared. That's why they want to cheer you on. For the sake of the future." We sat quietly, the atmosphere heavy with nerves. Sensing our tension, she suddenly blasted classic rock at a volume so loud it made us want to cover our ears. Apparently, she was determined to recreate a scene from School of Rock. We burst into laughter, throwing our arms in the air like maniacs. For a brief moment, we already felt like rock stars. The playlist she'd made especially for us that day filled the car, and we couldn't stop cheering at each song that came on. Even now, that playlist remains one of my favorites. Whenever I feel down, I still turn to those songs for comfort. Our voices pierced through the dark night sky as if cutting it apart. Gradually, the blackness gave way to a faint purple hue, and the world around us began to brighten. The weather forecast had called for scattered rain, but it turned out to be completely wrong. "I'm a sunshine guy," Rain declared confidently. "Whenever there's an event, the weather's always on my side." In the distance, the festival grounds came into view. When we arrived, the venue was already buzzing with staff hard at work. We were directed to the parking area reserved for festival personnel and then made our way to the performer's tent. Our teacher, however, was far more animated than any of us. "Look over there. Aren't those members of a famous band? Oh, and there's another one," she exclaimed, practically bouncing with excitement. Looking back now, I think she might have been the most thrilled out of all of us that day. Or maybe, just maybe, she was putting on a show to help ease our nerves. We arrived at the tent and began preparing our instruments. From the stage, we could hear the sounds of another band's rehearsal drifting through the air. And then, it was our turn. The audience area was empty, just an expanse of open field stretching out before us. The stage, towering high above the ground, felt intimidating, and a shiver of fear crept through me. Unsettled by the unfamiliar surroundings, I found myself turning toward Constantine, our drummer, over and over again. He was the one constant in this alien space. The anchor I needed. When our rehearsal was over, our teacher couldn't stop repeating, "You'll be fine. I know you can do this." It was clear she was nervous too. As the tension in the air thickened, we began changing into our stage outfits. I wanted to run. Right then and there, I wanted to flee. I even caught myself on the verge of blurting out, "I want to go home." Chapter 9, Stage Night. As the time for our concert drew closer, our conversations grew quieter and quieter until we were practically silent. I even considered slipping off to the restroom and never coming back. Our teacher was talking a lot, clearly trying to ease our nerves, but I couldn't remember a single word she said. The sounds of the crowd began to filter through. From the backstage area where we waited, we couldn't see the audience, but the sheer volume of voices made it clear there were a lot of people out there. We were the first act. The opening band. As amateurs, we'd assumed only a handful of early birds would show up this soon, most saving their energy for the bigger names later. But we were wrong. Realizing the crowd was much larger than I'd imagined, panic began to claw at me. A festival staff member approached us. "It's almost your turn. Get ready." Alex's expression shifted. At this point, there was no turning back for us. It was as if he'd flipped a switch. His resolve was clear. In moments like this, he was truly dependable. He turned to us and said, "Even if we screw up, it'll just become one of those funny memories someday. So let's enjoy today." Yeah. Hearing that, the tension on our faces softened. Rain chimed in, "Well, at least Alex won't be drinking in front of our teacher today, so no chance of messing up." We burst out laughing. The weight in the air lifted. Our teacher seemed to be saying something to Alex, but he just shouted, flustered, "Don't laugh." Finally, it was our time. With hearts beating fast, we headed toward the stage. As we stepped onto the stage, the front row of the audience was already packed with familiar faces. Friends. Classmates. People we knew from around school. It felt like the entire student body had shown up to see us. Seeing their faces eased my nerves, just a little. I can do this. I can sing my heart out. That thought steadied me. Constantine started the count. It was the same opening track we always played at smaller venues. The one that never failed to boost our confidence. And just like that, our concert began. The stage was higher than usual. Wider than anything we'd performed on before. It was our first outdoor concert, and the crowd was enormous, 4 times larger than anything we'd ever seen. Everything about it felt like another world. What song were we on by then? I think it was during our 3rd track. That's when I noticed something. The people who had been farther away from the stage, they were starting to drift closer. The crowd in the front row seemed to swell, growing larger with every beat of the music. From the stage, it looked like a massive wave rolling toward us. It felt alive, like a single, enormous being, its entire focus fixed on us. In that moment, I felt it, every single one of them was cheering for us. Just us. We were playing on the stage we'd always dreamed of. The one we'd longed for with all our hearts. This is where I belong, I thought. This is my world. I wanted to freeze time. I wished, with everything in me, for that moment to last forever. Chapter 10, our first big stage. We found ourselves overwhelmed by the vastness of the stage, unable to move far from our assigned spots. There was one song where we had planned to strike the same pose together. We had practiced it over and over, but it never came to fruition. The reason was simple: the distance between our positions was far greater than we had imagined. As for me, I completely forgot to perform the pose I had rehearsed so many times in front of the mirror. After the final song, we had decided to imitate the classic move often seen in rock bands, the one where all the members gather at the center of the stage, arms around each other, thanking the audience as one. But when the last notes rang out, I found myself standing alone, left behind on the stage. In their excitement, the others had forgotten all about it and had already stepped off the stage. Waving to the audience, I followed them off stage. And so, our very first performance on a grand stage came to an end. We stepped off the stage, our hearts racing with excitement. Our teacher came running toward us, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I'd be this moved," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. I remember watching her, feeling a mix of happiness and embarrassment. I was glad she was proud, but the festival staff nearby had started looking over at us, clearly curious about the commotion. In that moment, I thought to myself, I'm so glad I didn't run away. For the first time, it felt like a bit of confidence had taken root inside me. Back at the performer's tent, we began changing out of our stage outfits and into our regular clothes. We chatted excitedly, someone saying, "Let's hurry up and catch the concert." Just then, a man we didn't recognize walked into the tent. Our teacher began talking to him, her expression shifting to something serious. Then, as if she couldn't hold it in any longer, she turned back to us and said with a wide smile, "Guess what? He's from a record label." The record label he worked for was one of those famous companies everyone knows. He was a talent scout, always on the lookout for new artists. Apparently, he had taken an interest in us and said he wanted to have a conversation with us soon. It seems he had watched a live video of ours that the manager of the small venue we frequently performed at had sent to a festival organizer. Then, after seeing tonight's concert, he approached us directly. For some reason, our teacher acted as if she were our band manager and started talking to him. She passionately declared, "Our band is the hope of our town." I felt a little uneasy about the whole thing, but for some reason, Alex was grinning from ear to ear. Alex flashed a fearless grin. Just as I predicted. Did he really believe that? Yet, there were moments when it felt as if some mysterious force was guiding him. For a fleeting second, I couldn't help but think, maybe what he said is true. We moved over to the audience area where our friends were waiting. The moment they saw us, they erupted into cheers. Some were even in tears, overwhelmed by emotion. In that moment, I thought once again, I'm glad I didn't run away back then. Then, strangers, people we'd never met came up to us, asking for autographs. I hadn't practiced signing anything before, so I drew a simple crescent moon and wrote, "Wait for the day it becomes full." Chapter 11 High Ride. I was supposed to have watched my favorite band's concert at that festival. Yet, I hardly remember any of it. After the final band wrapped up their performance, we thanked the festival staff and piled into our teacher's car to head home. On the way back to our hometown, she chatted cheerfully with the 3 band members in the car. Laughter and conversation filled the space, but there were moments when I couldn't quite join in. Noticing this, she turned to me, her voice soft yet firm. "You're like the moon, shining in the darkness. But you don't have to light up the night all on your own anymore. The people who came to your concert today? They're the stars. They're doing everything they can to illuminate you. Even on a moonless night, when you're not there, they shine their light to protect the darkness until you return to the sky. They'll always be on your side, so you don't have to carry everything alone anymore." Her words stayed with me, swirling in my mind even as exhaustion overtook us. One by one, we drifted off to sleep. In the swaying car, I dreamed of singing on a grand stage. The lights were blinding. The crowd was roaring. But when I looked around, the 3 band members were gone. I was standing there, all alone. I woke up to the gentle voice of our teacher. "Hey, we're here. You're home." Apparently, we had arrived at my house. I thanked her and turned to the 3 band members, forcing a smile. "See you at school," I said. Yet, part of me was still stuck in the dream. "Don't leave me. Don't let me be alone," I thought silently to myself. The moment I stepped inside, my mother threw her arms around me. Both my parents showered me with praise, their faces glowing with pride. Seeing how happy they were made my heart soar. It felt good, so good, to think I could make them this proud. The next chapter of our journey began with an online meeting. We sat in front of a screen, our teacher joining us as always, this time alongside the staff from the record label. School continued, but now it was paired with lessons, and the discussions had turned to something monumental, our debut after a year of training. Occasionally, high-ranking executives from the record label would appear, their voices filled with enthusiasm. "The way things are now, rock bands aren't trending anymore," they said. "But you guys, you can break that mold." Their words sounded powerful, hopeful. But beneath it all, there was a strange heaviness I couldn't shake. The thick contract they handed us was like a foreign language to me. I couldn't understand it. So, I handed it to my parents. They read it over, page by page, before finally saying, "There's no problem with it." And so, we signed the deal with the record company. It was the moment everything changed. The gears surrounding us began to turn. Faster and faster, spinning beyond my control. Before I knew it, we were set to make our debut. I could barely keep pace with the whirlwind around me. That's when I learned something important: writing lyrics came with deadlines. Our band was no longer just ours. A crowd of adults was orchestrating plans to make us famous. Under the weight of that pressure, writing lyrics felt different. Subtle. Constricting. I started to feel off. Perhaps I had lost sight of what was truly right. There was never supposed to be a right answer to writing lyrics. And yet, I had come to believe that getting the producer's approval was the correct path. Chapter 12, Another Me in the Picture. We recorded our songs and shot the cover for our debut single. But the person in those photos didn't feel like me at all. Then, our debut single was released. It sparked some buzz on social media, a fresh rookie rock band emerging at a time when rock had faded from the spotlight. Before we could even savor that fleeting excitement, we were back in the studio, recording song after song. We no longer had time to attend school. In light of that, our teachers made special arrangements for us to graduate early. Our music teacher cried. I couldn't help but think back to that day at the outdoor music festival we went to together. Our EP was finally released. And now, we were about to embark on our very first tour. Concerts in towns we'd never been to, for people we'd never met. We were filled with equal parts anticipation and anxiety. But deep down, I felt at ease because I had the three of them with me. If I'd been alone, I don't think I could have even considered going on tour. Alex turned to us and said, "Tonight, we're performing in this town. This is the true beginning of our first chapter." Our hearts were already pounding with excitement. We found ourselves backstage, in an unfamiliar venue, in an unfamiliar town. A staff member came up to us and said, "There are more people here than we expected." And with that, we headed for the stage. The stage was shrouded in darkness. The sound effects cut out. Alex began playing the guitar intro. In the audience, there were only a few familiar faces, friends who always came to support us at our concerts. Most of the crowd was made up of strangers. Even so, the floor of the venue was packed with people, so much so that you couldn't see the ground beneath them. Our debut concert as professional musicians had come to an end. After that, we traveled from town to town, performing more shows. There were days when the audience was sparse, but for the most part, enough people came to fill the venues. And so, our first tour, both brief and seemingly endless, finally came to a close. We attended the celebration party organized by the record label staff to mark the end of our first tour. They said to us, "You were absolutely amazing. At this rate, we should dive straight into making an album." Without a moment's rest, we began working on new songs. And before long, we were in the studio, recording them. I had no time to think. All I could do was keep up with the schedule they laid out for us. Before we knew it, our debut album was released. As soon as our next tour schedule was finalized, we threw ourselves into daily rehearsals. Our world was spinning at an incredible speed. We found ourselves in a different town almost every night. The days when I couldn't even remember where I was began to outnumber the ones I could. With barely any time to sleep, we were always on the move, always working. My thoughts had come to a complete standstill. And yet, I didn't feel much anxiety. Because I had the three of them. Alex was spending more and more time talking with the tour staff, but Rain and Constantine were always by my side. I wonder if it was around that time that Constantine began to look out for us in his own subtle, caring way, like a leader should. Rain, on the other hand, remained as kind as ever. I felt a quiet happiness simply being with them. Our second tour, longer than the first, finally came to an end. Afterward, we were given a month off. Well, sort of. I had homework to do, write as many lyrics as I could for the next album. It felt like summer vacation homework all over again. At home, I spent my days jotting down lyric ideas. But I struggled. Without listening to Alex's music, ideas rarely came to me. I found myself realizing all over again how much I relied on his songs. And how much I truly loved his music. One day, Constantine, our leader, called me. "Our break's been extended," he said. "I'll let you know as soon as we have a new deadline." Chapter 13, Take a Break. According to Constantine, Alex had been tasked with composing music for a new female vocalist. It was part of a major project by our record label, which was gearing up to promote her on a massive scale. Until Alex finished his compositions, our break was to be extended. When I heard this, I felt a strange sense of unease. It was as if he was being taken away by someone else, slipping further and further into a world beyond my reach. I began to feel as though my world was changing without me even realizing it. I picked up my phone, intending to call him, but in the end, I couldn't bring myself to do it. That dissonance, subtle yet undeniable, had begun to steer us toward a direction none of us wanted. Our break continued. The first time I heard the debut single Alex had written for her was on TV. She was an instant sensation, creating buzz everywhere. Not long after, her songs seemed to follow me wherever I went. It played in shops, on the radio, everywhere. My feelings were complicated. Soon, the recording schedule for our next album was finalized. The songs Alex brought to us were incredible, as always. And yet, deep down, I found myself comparing them to the song he had written for her. Maybe, back then, a part of me thought I should have been the one to sing that song. Before I realized it, I had started avoiding conversations with him. Her song's success had a ripple effect, drawing more attention to our band, the one her composer was part of. Amid this newfound spotlight, our latest album was selling exceptionally well. A tour schedule was being mapped out for us, with concert venues larger than those from our previous tour. This marked the start of our third tour. By now, we had grown somewhat accustomed to the whirlwind of it all, finding a sense of ease in the chaos. As the tour progressed, her single began to fade from my thoughts. Instead, I was savoring each day with the band. We, a group of small-town kids, felt more like siblings than bandmates. And in my heart, I wished these days would never end. And so, our tour came to an end. We entered a long break once again. Determined to do everything I hadn't been able to until now, I made a list and started tackling each item, one by one. For a few days, I went back to my family home and met up with old friends from my hometown. Life felt full and satisfying. Then, one day, I got a call from Constantine. "I'm joining the tour as part of the backing band for a female vocalist. She's performing songs Alex wrote." I froze, unsure how to respond. Alex and Constantine. Together? Shock overtook me. Chapter 14, Moon and Sun. It's just a short tour. It'll be over before you know it. Why don't you go travel abroad and have some fun? I couldn't say a word. You okay? Can you hear me? Anyway, that's the plan. I'll call you again later, he said, and the call abruptly ended. When her tour began, I saw it unfold on TV and the internet. She had appeared like a comet, blazing across the sky, rising to stardom in an instant. Watching her ascent became unbearable. I stopped watching TV and avoided the internet altogether. It felt like my world was being painted over by hers. One day, I got a call from one of the staff members. "Have you ever considered debuting as a solo singer?" I turned them down. To me, it felt like betraying my bandmates. My emotions were a tangled mess. Amidst it all, Constantine, our leader, was the only one who seemed to understand how I felt. He'd occasionally call me, but not once did he mention her. Most of the time, we talked about nothing in particular. Maybe he just wanted to check if I was still breathing. Because, honestly, back then, I felt as though I wasn't truly alive. If this were a dream, I prayed desperately for it to end. This was something I only heard much later from Constantine. As our band grew more popular, Alex began to feel like all the attention was focused solely on me. He thought no one was really listening to his music anymore. And yet, the record label relentlessly pressured him to produce hit songs. He wanted to escape from composing. But at the same time, he wanted to make our band even more famous. So, he decided to write songs for the female vocalist as a way to seize that opportunity. It was all for the sake of our band. On top of that, the record label had made him an offer. If he supported her tour, they would increase the promotional budget for our band. I was the only one who knew nothing. I felt betrayed by him, completely unaware of his struggles. I thought he no longer needed me. If I had known the truth about him back then, my feelings toward him might have been entirely different. I truly loved his music. No matter what anyone said, I believed it was the best in the world. I felt like I couldn't even exist in this world without his songs. But I never told him that. If I had, maybe the future would have turned out differently. Rain sensed that things weren't right between Alex and me. In an effort to mend our relationship, he proposed an online meeting to discuss ideas for our next album. But we both kept refusing. I couldn't bring myself to respond to his kindness. Rain grew increasingly frustrated, realizing he couldn't stop our band from falling apart. He didn't know who to direct his anger at. One day, during her tour, he reached a point where he no longer wanted to talk to anyone. "I'll drive myself to the concert venue," he said. Constantine tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. And so, he set off alone, driving to the venue. Chapter 15 Raining Days. That day, I wasn't watching TV or browsing the internet. I slept in until early afternoon. I had no motivation to do anything. I stayed home, not bothering to go anywhere. All I did was stare at the white clouds outside my window. In the silence of my room, the clouds drifted by, shifting their shapes. Never once did they take the same form again. I thought it was just like my world, ever-changing, never stable. I felt like I had nowhere left to go. Yesterday felt like a distant, far-off dream. As I sat, lost in those thoughts, the phone, so rarely used, suddenly rang, its shrill tone piercing the quiet. Startled, I rushed to my phone. I assumed it was Constantine calling, as usual. When I picked up the phone and checked the screen, I was right, it was him. He was the only person I felt like talking to anymore. As I answered, there was silence on the other end. Thinking he might be playing a rare prank, I let out a small laugh. But then, in a grave tone, he said, "I need you to stay strong and listen." I noticed a faint tremor in his voice and immediately sensed something was very wrong. "Okay," I said. A long silence stretched between us. I could hear the sound of his deep, deliberate breaths. Then, in a quiet, steady voice, he said, "Rain is dead." A sudden call from Constantine. And then, out of nowhere, he said something completely beyond the scope of my imagination. I couldn't grasp what he meant. "What do you mean?" I asked. Rain had died in a car accident on his way to the concert venue. I could tell Constantine was holding back tears. "If you'd been on the tour bus with him," I asked, "would you have been okay?" He was on the verge of breaking down, his voice barely comprehensible. Even so, he tried desperately to explain the details of Rain's accident. But I still couldn't cry. My world went pitch black. The only sound I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat, echoing through the room. I had lost all sense of where I was. Without me even realizing it, my entire world had shifted dramatically. On TV and the internet, news of Rain's accident had already become a massive headline. Her tour had been cancelled, an incident so large it brought everything to a halt. I was desperately searching for myself. But I had already run far, far away. At the edge of my darkened world, I was curled up, alone. A world with no one else. In this world of mine, I was the only one left behind. The memories of what happened after that. They are gone.
Like a lucid dream.
Chapter 16: The Aftermath. When I came to my senses, it was already morning. My room was in complete disarray, as if a burglar had broken in and ransacked the place. I lay there, unmoving, letting only my eyes dart around to take in the chaos. Fear gripped me. I couldn't move. I wondered if I was still dreaming. If this was a lucid dream, I thought, then I had to find a way to wake up. But no matter how desperately I searched for an exit in that dreamlike state, I couldn't find one. Eventually, I forced myself to stand and began to take a few tentative steps. The sensation in my feet told me I was truly awake. I was in the real world. Yet, the scene before me was beyond my comprehension. A few days later, I found myself being led by someone, surrounded by a crowd of people. They were crying. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Rain." Startled, I turned toward the voice. Before me stood a coffin. My vision plunged into darkness all at once. I began to scream. And then, everything faded. I lost consciousness. When I came to, I was walking through a void of darkness. There was nothing to see around me. How long had I been wandering? A voice called out from behind me. I turned around, and in an instant, my vision was consumed by blinding white light. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying down somewhere. A woman stood nearby, speaking to me. "Where am I?" I asked. I jolted upright and hurried out of the room. It was a hospital. Fragments of my memory began to piece themselves together. I had been brought here after losing consciousness and had slept for 2 days straight. Suddenly, I remembered Rain. I grabbed my phone and checked it. There were countless missed calls and messages. Everyone seemed worried about me. Frantically, I searched for missed calls or messages from Rain, but there were none. Not a single one. A sense of dread crept over me. Panic-stricken, I rushed out of the hospital. Outside, rain was pouring down in sheets. I tilted my head back, staring at the stormy sky, and screamed, "Rain. Where are you?" I still hadn't seen Rain. I was still searching for Rain. After being discharged from the hospital, I returned home for the first time in what felt like forever. My room was spotless. Someone, thoughtful and considerate, must have cleaned it for me. Without thinking, I turned on the TV. On the screen, something was burning. I couldn't look away from the scene. The reporters were saying Rain's name. The footage was from a helicopter, showing a massive fire on the road below. It was Rain's car. I started screaming. I slammed my fists against the TV until it shattered. And then, once again, everything went black. Chapter 17: My Son. When I opened my eyes, the world outside was bathed in a golden-orange glow. I remembered that I had only just been discharged from the hospital. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. The sound startled me. Hesitantly, I went to check who it was. To my shock, it was Rain. I opened the door. Without thinking, I threw my arms around him and cried out, "Where have you been all this time?" He looked sheepish, avoiding my gaze as he mumbled, "I'm sorry." Right then and there, I broke down in tears. Watching me sob, he apologized again. Taking my hand gently, he led me to the living room. I couldn't contain the relief and joy swelling in my chest. I was so happy to see him. He sat down on the sofa, but there was a shadow in his expression, something heavy and unspoken. I asked him, "What do you want to drink?" He replied, "Lately, I've been so thirsty. I'd like some cold water." I teased him, "Not your usual beer? I have some chilled, just the way you like it." But he shook his head and said, "I don't want beer." There was a strange, unreadable look on his face. He seemed troubled, as if something heavy weighed on his mind. I didn't press him with questions. It didn't matter. What mattered most to me was that I could see Rain again. He kept asking for refills and drank glass after glass of water, as though he couldn't quench his thirst. Our conversation flowed endlessly, most of it filled with memories from our school days. He even shared stories about Alex, from before we had even met. The two of them had been like real brothers. Then, he began to talk about me. He told me about the first time he saw me in the classroom. He said it looked as though a beam of light was shining on me. To him, it wasn't just light, it felt like a path leading into the future. He admitted that he had tried to speak to me several times back then. But he could never figure out what to say, so he ended up staying silent. When I laughed at his story, he looked a little embarrassed, scratching his nose with a sheepish grin. We talked through the night without stopping. The sky had already begun to lighten. Suddenly, he stood up and said, "This was fun. But I should get going." "Wait," I said. "Why don't you stay here tonight?" He smiled faintly and replied, "Thanks, but I've got something I need to do today." There was a deep sadness in his expression. I didn't press him to stay any longer. After all, I thought I could see him again anytime. Before leaving, he said, "I had a great time tonight. You are as beautiful as ever." I waved goodbye, my hand in the air until his figure disappeared from sight. Relieved, I fell asleep right there on the sofa. Warm sunlight streamed into the room, wrapping everything in a gentle glow. When I woke, I felt surrounded by a sense of calm. It seemed like I had been dreaming, but I couldn't remember what it was about. On the table, there were 2 half-empty glasses. And faintly, the lingering scent of rain still hung in the air. That alone was enough to reassure me. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace in my waking moments. I stood up slowly, stretching as I rose. Then, I finished off a glass of cold water. There was a nagging feeling that I'd forgotten something important, but I chose not to dwell on it. Chapter 18, A Lost Fragment of My Memory. After a while, my phone rang. The call was from a staff member at the record company. "I understand the situation you're in," she began, "but the recording schedule for your new album has been finalized." I stayed silent, unsure of how to respond. Sensing this, she continued, "Once I receive Alex's new songs, I'll send them to you. Before that, I'll email you the schedule. Please take a look at it." With that, the call ended. Something important, buried deep in my memory, began to resurface. Without hesitation, I called Constantine. "What's this about recording for our new album?" I demanded. Constantine chose his words carefully as he explained. "We're obligated to produce one more original album under our contract with the record company," he said. Alex had already started working on new songs. But the moment Constantine mentioned Rain's name, fragments of memories stabbed into me like shards of glass. "Rain!" I screamed, tears streaming down my face. Constantine's voice faded into the distance, unable to reach me. How much time passed after that, I couldn't tell. Then I heard him again, calling my name. Slowly, I reached for my phone once more. "Are you okay?" he asked. I replied, "Yeah, I'm fine." His voice softened. "I'm coming over. Just wait for me." The call ended, leaving the room quiet once again. Constantine came to my house. He was clearly worried about me. He glanced at the broken TV but didn't say a word about it. Instead, he spoke. "Are you eating properly? I bought your favorite sandwich. Eat this." His kindness warmed me. I sat beside him and started eating the sandwich. As he watched me eat, he began to talk. "The record company has always backed us up, so we've got to make a great album this time too." I stayed silent, listening to his words. Our agency decided to cover all the losses caused by Rain's mistake. I froze mid-bite. That's why our next tour will be a bit longer, so we can at least start paying back some of those losses. I couldn't fully grasp what he was saying about Rain. My eyes drifted to the broken TV, and suddenly, darkness swept over my vision. I saw Rain's back as he walked away. I screamed his name, desperate, chasing after him. "Are you okay?" Constantine's voice broke through as he shook me gently. I snapped back to reality. He pulled me into his arms. I could feel the rapid thudding of his heartbeat. "I'm not leaving you," he said firmly. "I'll never let you be alone again."
Way back home with you.
Chapter 19. Picking up the pieces. The price Rain paid for leading her tour to cancellation was steep. Alex, his best friend, was desperately struggling to keep the band alive, even for Rain's sake. He spent his days in endless meetings with countless stakeholders, trying to salvage what he could. Perhaps he felt responsible for Rain's accident. Maybe he thought that if he hadn't fallen out with me, if he hadn't convinced Rain to join her tour, he wouldn't have been driving alone that night. He and Rain had been best friends since they were 3 years old. To me, they were the definition of true friendship. I used to envy them as I watched their bond. And yet, I loved watching them, too. Alex wouldn't stop. I knew nothing of what he was feeling. He was busy creating new songs, getting ready for recording. At the time, I was angry. Angry at how forcefully he pushed everything forward. I needed time to come to terms with Rain. I couldn't move forward until I understood what was true. And yet, Alex seemed to be changing my world against my will, without me even noticing. The recording schedule was sent to me by the staff. To me, it felt like an unrelenting attack. I wanted to reject it all, every single part of it. The relentless approach of the first day of recording loomed over me like an unyielding shadow. I wanted to throw everything away, to bring it all to an end. Everything I saw appeared dark, distorted, tainted by an inky blackness. I was completely alone, isolated from the world. I couldn't trust anyone. Why did I have to sing? Who was I singing for? The band we had started for fun, for the sheer joy of it, had somehow become a source of torment, slowly crushing us under its weight. Then, my phone rang. It was Constantine. "Are you okay?" "If it's too much for you, I'll push back the recording schedule," he said, his voice calm yet laced with concern. I stayed silent for a while, the words refusing to form. And then I finally spoke. "What do you think Rain would say if he saw me like this now?" He listened quietly, not saying a word. "I still believe Rain is out there somewhere, alive. Maybe on our next tour, he'll show up at one of the concert venues." Constantine had offered to pick me up on the first day of recording, but I turned him down. And so, the day came. Alone, I made my way to the recording studio. By the time I arrived, the session had already begun. My vocal recording wasn't scheduled until later in the day, so I had time. When I stepped into the studio, Constantine was there. Relief washed over his face, and he greeted me with genuine joy, as if my arrival had lifted a weight from him. But Alex and Rain, who were always supposed to be there, were nowhere to be seen.
Like a lucid dream, deeper and deeper, so cold.
Chapter 20. Rising Up. I was listening to the newly recorded songs. Rain's bass guitar sound filled my ears. No matter which track I played, it was unmistakably his sound. Constantine began explaining what had happened during the recording sessions up to that point. Alex had refused to hire a studio musician to record the bass parts. He had stubbornly rejected the idea, no matter what. Instead, he used Rain's bass guitar and her amplifier to record every single track himself. Occasionally, he would abruptly leave the studio, only to return some time later and quietly resume recording. It seemed he had repeated this process again and again. In that moment, as I listened, I could feel Rain's sound resonate through my entire body. My vocal recording sessions were anything but smooth. I interrupted the process countless times, unable to move forward. And yet, strangely enough, I never felt the urge to run away. I rewrote the lyrics over and over as I recorded. I didn't want to write words that Rain wouldn't want to hear. I didn't want to make him feel lonely. I didn't want to give him reason to worry. If he hadn't told me he loved my lyrics, I probably would have stopped writing them altogether. Bit by bit, I poured my energy into those songs, weaving myself into them. And all the while, Rain's sound, faint and steady, carried me through. "Rain, can you hear my voice?" I saw the staff in tears. They had always been there for us, supporting us through everything. They weren't just our team, they felt like family. Usually, our recording sessions were filled with laughter and casual conversations. But this time, we barely spoke to each other. The only voices echoing through the studio were those of the director and the engineers. Looking back, maybe all of us already knew this would be our final album. When I finished my last vocal recording, one of the staff brought me a bouquet of flowers. Their kindness toward us was genuine, unshakable. And yet, in that moment, it hurt. It hurt so much. I was consumed by a deep sense of guilt over the decision I had made. Leaving the band. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not a soul. The thought of how sad they would be if I said it out loud only made it harder to bring myself to say it. I despised my own weakness. To the public, I must look like a strong, fearless rock singer. But the truth was, I wasn't nearly as strong as they thought I was. I'd grown used to playing that role, but that was all it was, a role I performed to fit the image they had of me. It was who I was in their world, not my own. In my world, I was still the same girl who loved to sing, just as I had been on that day. I wished for nothing more than for the moment I first sang in Alex's garage to last forever. Maybe it would have been enough just to play music with my friends and see them enjoy it. But now, there was no way to change anything, no way to stop it. The countdown to collapse had already begun. I could only watch as our band fell apart right before my eyes. Rain, will you lend me your strength? Chapter 21: The Ugly Side. For the first time, Alex had taken on the role of lead producer, working tirelessly on editing our new album. They said he stayed alone in the studio for days on end, pulling all-nighters, his obsession teetering on the edge of madness. It was as if something had possessed him. Every so often, the staff would send me demo tracks, but I refused to listen to them. I won't say anything, I told the staff. I trust all of you completely. Just send me the final version when it's done. I believed in Rain. I believed he wouldn't abandon us. I could feel his frustration, the deep ache that drove him forward. The staff sent me the songs from our newly completed album. Rain, welcome back, I whispered as I pressed play. What poured out was the sound of the four of us. It was exactly the same as what I had heard in that garage back then. I loved our band with all my heart. I truly believed there was no other band in this world as incredible as ours. Among the songs they sent, Rain was there, unmistakably there. My vision blurred with tears, and the scene before me began to spin. In a flash, I was back in that garage, transported to a time that wasn't so far away, yet felt like a distant memory of our teenage years. The day we first played together as a band in Alex's garage. We already felt like professional musicians. The day we played back our first recorded song through the amp. Watching the waveforms dance on the tiny equalizer screen, we shared a moment of awe together. Our first concert at a small venue in our hometown. Alex, so nervous before the show, drank too much beer and ended up completely drunk. Back then, I was always laughing, carefree, and from the heart. As the final track on the album ended, those memories slowly faded, sinking back into the darkness. Back then, the world had lifted us up like tricksters, reveling in the chaos we seemed to embody. Thanks to that image, our newly released single performed well, its sales soaring. The tour schedule was set, and everything appeared to be falling into place. Meanwhile, the mystery surrounding Rain's death had captivated the public. Did Rain take his own life? Or was he murdered? Speculation gave birth to conspiracy theories, which, in turn, evolved into urban legends. I avoided watching TV or going online, but even so, the rumors inevitably reached me. By then, no one cared about the truth anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone's senses had grown numb. One day, I was interviewed by a magazine. The interviewer asked me, was it your side that plotted Rain's assassination, or was it Alex's side? I lost my temper instantly. I don't remember much of what happened next. Apparently, I tried to punch the interviewer. A cameraman nearby stopped me just in time. Thanks to the staff who covered for me, I faced no repercussions for the incident. However, somehow the information leaked, and it became a minor topic on social media. Chapter 22: Unexpected Outcome. Looking back, I suppose I should be grateful that the incident didn't make the news. After that, I started receiving interview questions in advance. Our staff was always trying to protect us, doing their best to shield us from harm. But the moment I stepped outside, I was met with a barrage of scrutiny, an unrelenting storm of judgment. I couldn't even speak my truth anymore. It felt like the place I once belonged to in my own world was slowly slipping away. I was being cornered, little by little. A caged bird that only sang on occasion. A hummingbird with its wings clipped. At last, our tour began. I couldn't help but notice the slightly somber atmosphere among the staff. We haven't said a word about it, but rumors were already circulating that this tour would be our last. It all started with whispers of my supposed departure, something no one should have known about. That rumor had somehow spiraled into talk of our band breaking up entirely. By then, we had lost control. There was nothing left for us to steer. All we could do was surrender ourselves to the current and let it take us wherever it would. The three of us waited in separate dressing rooms at the concert venue. Out of consideration for the staff, we were kept apart, only meeting once it was time to step onto the stage. And so, I was alone again. The staff came to my dressing room. They told me it was time to head to the stage because our concert was about to begin. The sound of the roaring crowd filled the air. The opening SE was almost drowned out by their cheers. When I reached the stage, the rest of the band was already waiting. Seeing them there, I felt a sense of relief. Normally, during the concert, I would head over to Alex's side and hype up the crowd with him. But on this tour, I couldn't bring myself to do that. A few times, I tried to walk toward him, but my legs just wouldn't move. During the tour, the staff went out of their way to shield us from news reports and the chatter of others. Thanks to their efforts, I was completely cut off from the world and knew nothing of what was happening. Around that time, it seems there was a buzz in the news about how Alex and I hadn't exchanged a single glance during our performances. To be honest, that was probably true. I was so consumed by the act of singing that I couldn't think about anything else. There were even moments when I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I broke down crying mid-song and couldn't continue. Seeing me like that, there was no way the audience could remain unaffected. The live recordings that the staff faithfully captured after every show, I didn't listen to them even once throughout the tour. Without anyone uttering a word about disbandment, the tour quietly marched toward its final day. And then, the last day arrived. The sky was clear and blue, defying the weather forecast that had predicted rain up until the night before. Each of us headed to the concert venue separately. Separate dressing rooms. We didn't see each other at all until we stepped onto the stage. It was an unsettling, abnormal atmosphere, as though we were deliberately being kept apart. The tour director had instructed the entire staff to make sure we didn't overhear. This might be their last show, he had told them. Chapter 23: The Dimming Lights. Around that time, outside the concert venue, a crowd of people who couldn't get tickets had gathered, and it had escalated into a minor riot. By then, everyone seemed convinced we were going to break up. No one had said a word about it yet, but somehow, everyone just knew. The stage went dark. We each took our positions. The roar of the crowd pierced through us. Our final tour performance had begun. Time pressed forward without pause, indifferent to the weight of the moment. As the concert reached its midpoint, my voice began to strain. I had been screaming more than usual, pouring every ounce of my emotions into each word. By then, I didn't care. I had given everything. If I were to die right there on that stage, I thought, I'd have no regrets. Through the lights, I could see people in the audience crying. After a while, the scene in front of me began to feel unreal, like something out of a dream. I found myself wishing it was a dream. Before I realized it, the final song ended. Alex was the first to leave the stage. As I sat alone in the dressing room, there was a frantic knock on my door. A staff member hurriedly informed me that Alex was going to the stage alone before the encore. I was asked to wait in the dressing room. I had no idea what Alex was doing out there. Restless and uneasy, I left and joined the staff in a room where they had gathered. A monitor displayed the stage. And then I heard it. "Rain, are you watching us?" Alex was speaking to the audience, his voice steady yet heavy. He admitted that ever since what happened with Rain, he had lost the will to compose. He explained that he tried to quit the band, thinking it was the only way to not let down the fans or the other members. but the rest of us had convinced him to stay. Even so, he continued, it had come to this. Ultimately, it was his fault that the band was breaking up. Alex was deliberately casting himself as the villain. Unbeknownst to us, he had already informed the people involved with the tour about his decision to disband. He had taken it all upon himself, shielding us from the fallout. Behind the scenes, he had even gone so far as to ask for arrangements to be made, a solo debut for me, and a new band for Constantine. It was all his responsibility, or so he claimed. I stared at Alex on the monitor, and all I could think was that I didn't want the band to break up. But I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. The staff were crying. I wanted to cry, too. Why does such an amazing band have to end like this? Why did you decide something so big all on your own? Rain, are you really okay with this? Do you realize your best friend is being painted as the villain? From the audience, I could hear what sounded like screams. The concert director came up to me and said, "Shall we get you on stage now?" Chapter 24: The Sudden End. I was overwhelmed with guilt toward Alex. Guilt for leaving him all alone. When the encore began, the audience erupted into deafening screams. I had never seen anything like it before. The fans had just learned the truth about the breakup, announced out of nowhere during the concert. I was no different. That day was the first time I learned we were breaking up, too. Our final show dropped on us without warning. If I had known before the tour started, maybe I would have cherished each performance more. But it was too late for that now. Our breakup was inevitable, looming closer with every passing moment. After every song, the audience's screams grew louder, more desperate. A countdown. The word echoed in my mind. When I found myself unable to speak on stage, Alex would step in and address the crowd. "This next song is our last, but please don't cry. Let's create an unforgettable memory together." I'm sure Rain is watching, too. As Constantine's count began, I took a step closer to Alex for the first time during that tour. Standing by his side, I sang what would truly be our final song. And just like that, it was like waking from a long dream. Our band came to an end. It happened only a few short years after the day I first sang in that garage. I didn't want to think about anything, so I immediately began preparing for my debut as a solo singer. Having only ever sung Alex's songs, I felt a strange unease with the tracks the record company had arranged for me. From those, I chose the ones that seemed most similar to what Alex would have written. Then came the release of my first album. The accompanying tour. Everything went smoothly. The staff, as always, kept information about the band members from me. I was completely alone now. After the tour ended, an offer came for me to appear in a TV drama. Without thinking, I lived out the script someone else had written for me. But by then, I was no longer there. I offered the people around me an indefinite break. And after my final task was done, I finally understood that there was nothing left for me. I stayed at home, not going anywhere, locking myself away. When no one reached out to me anymore, I decided to turn on the TV for the first time in ages. A song I recognized played from the speakers. It was my own voice. In a street interview, a passerby said they were waiting for our reunion. She explained that our music had given her courage, and now she wanted to return that courage to us. "I'm sorry, I can't do anything right now, but maybe we'll meet again someday." The sky that day seemed unusually bright and blue. I was in an unfamiliar town. A place where no one knew me. Here, I was just a stranger. And that felt comforting to me. Now, I've become acquainted with the clerks at the local supermarket. I was not bound by anyone or anything. I could do whatever I wanted, freely. Cooking, for me, was a nice way to refresh my mind. Since I was the only one eating, I couldn't say if the food tasted good, but it was enough for me. Perhaps, growing up in a rural town, a simple life suits me better. When I looked out the window, the blue sky was shining brightly. Chapter 25: Luna. It was the first time I had gone to the small local venue since I moved here. As I entered, I could hear the sound of music, not very skillful, but full of energy. Looking at the stage, it was clear they looked like teenagers. They were playing with such joy. Most of the audience were probably their friends. They, too, looked no older than middle or high school students. The boy on bass, blushing from the cheers of his friends, touched his nose shyly. A distant memory, buried deep inside me, seemed to overlap with the scene before my eyes. I had forgotten something important for so many years. Rain's anniversary. I remembered that Rain's anniversary was 3 weeks away. I thought that when I got home, I would book a plane ticket. By the time I realized it, their performance had ended. The band members were chatting with their friends in the audience area. They looked like heroes, glowing with pride. One of the boys from the band approached me. "Are you Luna, by any chance?" I was startled. In an instant, I denied it. "No, it's a mistake. People say I look like her, though." I couldn't believe that someone here knew me. He told me that he had started a band after listening to our music. He spoke passionately, saying that if we ever reunited, he would definitely come to the concert. He had a certain resemblance to Rain, the Rain I met for the first time. Our hometown is about a 3-hour drive from the airport. I arrived at the airport closest to my hometown for the first time in years. The taxi I had booked in advance was already waiting for me. I got into the taxi. Outside the window, familiar sights spread out before me. At the same time, my memories began to flood back. A tightness gripped my chest. "Rain, I'm sorry I left you alone. I'm coming to you now." I suddenly remembered something. Rain used to love Marlboro. I asked the taxi driver to stop by a store. He looked a bit puzzled but started searching for a shop on the GPS. The first store didn't have any, and neither did the next. We couldn't seem to find a place that sold cigarettes. These days, there aren't many stores that sell them. I remembered how Rain had once lamented that. After visiting several stores, I finally found a pack of Marlboro. And at last, I was on my way to where Rain was. "Soon, I will come to see you, so please wait for me. I'm sorry I haven't been there all this time." The taxi arrived at the entrance of the cemetery. I took a deep breath and walked through the gates. The sky was a beautiful blue. It didn't feel like Rain was angry. In fact, it seemed like he was happy. "You were a sunny person, weren't you?" I thought this clear blue sky must be a gift from him. A countryside town with no tall buildings. A town where the sky stretches out in every direction. We met here. The town where we, innocent and unaware, once slept. Memories from my childhood resurfaced. The carefree girl I used to be. I wonder if I can laugh again, just like I did back then? Another story picture book written by someone. Once upon a time, not so long ago, there was a little girl who couldn't find where she belonged. She felt all alone. One day, 3 kind princes came and took her to a world she had never seen before, making her a princess. She learned that she was never really alone. And from that day on, the 4 of them lived happily forever in that town. The book was gently closed. As I walked among the many graves, I caught sight of 2 men's figures from behind. When I neared Rain's grave, I recognized who they were. Familiar silhouettes. The same ones I had always watched. I moved closer to them. Sensing my presence, they turned around almost simultaneously. Alex and Constantine. Seeing their slightly surprised expressions, I cried from the heart, smiling a true smile. My story is far from over. There are still plenty of hard days ahead, waiting for us just around the corner. If you ever spot me somewhere, don't hesitate to call out. Let's talk until dawn breaks. You're not alone. In the end, we all return to the same place. And in the end, we'll meet again. My name is Luna. This is our story.
We already know again and again. Life is back here again someday. Beautiful smile, I know who you are, even if you look different. Nobody knows our origin. You never disappear from my memory.